You hear the first shells before dawn. They arrive without warning, ripping the night open with a sound that does not echo, it crushes. The ground beneath you trembles as if the island itself is recoiling. Palm trees bend. Coral dust lifts into the air like smoke. Somewhere inland, a cave collapses with a thunderous crack. This is Saipan, June 1944. For years, the rule has been simple and absolute. Japanese island fortresses do not fall quickly. They bleed attackers dry. They turn beaches into slaughterhouses. They stretch battles into months of attrition until the cost becomes unbearable. Everyone knows this rule. The Japanese Imperial Army believes it. Their doctrine is built on it. Dig deep, fortify everything, never surrender, force the enemy to pay for every yard in blood. American planners believe it too. Their maps of Saipan are marked with red estimates, 30 days, maybe 60. Casualty projections run into the tens of thousands. Intelligence officers warn that the island is honeycombed with caves, bunkers, and reinforced artillery positions carved straight into volcanic rock. Saipan is not just another island, it is the shield. From here, Japan's homeland sits within bomber range. Lose Saipan and the war reaches Tokyo's doorstep. That knowledge hardens every Japanese position and steals every order. Hold at all costs. No retreat. No surrender. So when the bombardment begins, 7 battleships, 11 cruisers, 26 destroyers firing thousands of shells, this is not meant to win the battle. It is meant to prepare you for a long one. But what no one fully understands yet is that this rule, this belief in inevitable grinding resistance, is already breaking apart. And it will not be shattered by a general, not by a battleship, but by a 17-year-old private moving alone through the jungle, speaking the enemy's language and refusing to fight the war the way either side expects. Because in 1944, on an island deemed unbreakable, one man will change how this battle ends and how quickly. You are Guy Louis Gabaldon. You are 17 years old. You should not be here. Before the war, you are a troubled kid from East Low's Angels, small, fast, angry at the world. Your parents are gone. You bounce between homes until a Japanese-American family, the Nakano family, takes you in. They teach you discipline, respect, language. You eat their food. You learn their customs. You speak their tongue fluently, not from textbooks, but from dinner tables and daily life. When Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, everything changes. The family who raised you is sent to an internment camp. You enlist anyway. You lie about your age to join the United States Marine Corps. By the time you land on Saipan with the 2nd Marine Division, you are one of the youngest Marines in the Pacific, and one of the few who can understand the enemy without a translator. Saipan, meanwhile, is a fortress. Roughly 32,000 Japanese troops defend the island, commanded by Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito. They have heavy artillery, coastal guns, mortars pre-sighted on every beach. Natural terrain does the rest. Steep ridges, dense jungle, and limestone caves that turn every advance into a death trap. The Americans land on June 15, 1944. The first waves are met with machine gun fire so intense it tears gaps in the assault lines. Amphibious tractors burn. Men drown under the weight of their gear. Casualties mount within minutes. You land with a rifle, grenades, and a skill the Marine Corps does not yet know how to use. At night, the battlefield changes. The jungle breathes differently after dark. Insects scream. The air thickens. Shadows move where they shouldn't. Japanese soldiers infiltrate American lines, slipping through gaps, attacking with bayonets and grenades. Most Marines dig in and wait for dawn. You do the opposite. You slip forward, alone. You move past the perimeter into enemy-held ground, guided by sound, memory, and language. You hear murmurs in the darkness, Japanese voices arguing, praying, whispering orders. This is when you realize something critical. The Japanese defenders are not just soldiers, they are terrified. They have been told Americans torture prisoners. That capture is worse than death. That surrender brings shame not just on themselves, but on their families for generations. So they fight to the last, or they die trying, but you know their language, and more importantly, you know their fears. You crawl close enough to hear breathing. You call out softly, calmly. You tell them the truth as you understand it. You tell them they will not be harmed, that the war is lost here, that staying means death. Sometimes they fire back. Sometimes they throw grenades, and sometimes impossibly they listen. One by one, then in groups, then in numbers that defy belief. You lead them out of caves with your rifle slung low, not raised. Hands go up. Weapons drop. Men who were expected to fight to the death walk into captivity instead. American officers stare in disbelief as you emerge from the darkness with dozens of prisoners behind you. Then hundreds. This is not how island warfare is supposed to work. Every surrendered soldier is one less rifle firing from a cave, one less ambush waiting at dawn, one less body that has to be killed at close range. By the end of the first week, Saipan is already bending. Japanese counterattacks fail to break the beachhead. American artillery pounds known cave systems. Tanks learn to fire point blank into openings. Flamethrowers change the geometry of defense entirely. And through it all, you keep going back out, night after night, each time deeper, each time more dangerous, because you can feel it now. The rule is collapsing. The island that was supposed to take months is already running out of time. And the most violent moment of the battle, the one that will decide everything, is still ahead. By the second week on Saipan, the math of the island no longer makes sense. American intelligence officers tally prisoner counts and blink twice. Entire cave systems are surrendering without a shot fired. Units that were supposed to be annihilated to the last man are simply gone. The map is changing faster than doctrine says it should. And at the center of this disruption, you keep moving. You are still 17. Your helmet sits too low on your brow. Your uniform is permanently stained with coral dust and sweat. You sleep in minutes, not hours. When the sun goes down, your body already knows what comes next. Night. You slip past the forward line again. The terrain rises sharply here, Mount Tapachau looming over the island like a watchtower. Its ridges are riddled with caves, some large enough to hide platoons, others barely wide enough for a single man and a rifle. The Japanese defenders know every contour. They have fields of fire mapped by memory. During the day, they hold fast. At night, they move. You move too. You listen for coughs, for whispered prayers, for the scrape of boots on limestone. You speak before they shoot, because once they shoot, the moment is gone. You call out in Japanese. You use their ranks, their honorifics. You speak like someone who belongs, and sometimes they answer. You tell them American artillery has already cut off their supply routes, that the Navy is gone, that no reinforcements are coming. You tell them surrender is not betrayal, it is survival. This is not mercy. This is leverage. Because behind you, the Marines are adapting just as fast. Tank infantry coordination tightens by the hour. Sherman tanks roll forward with infantry hugging their flanks, blasting cave mouths with 75mm shells at point-blank range. Flamethrower teams advance under covering fire, their fuel tanks sloshing as they climb. When flame pours into a cave, the fight ends in seconds. Japanese doctrine has no answer for this. Their defenses were designed to stop frontal assaults, not flexible combined arms pressure. Their belief in spiritual superiority does nothing against napalm and high explosives. Their refusal to surrender turns strongpoints into tombs, but you keep finding the exceptions. One night you crawl up to a cave complex near Garapan. You hear dozens of voices inside. Women, children, soldiers, civilians who fled inland believing the caves would protect them from bombardment. They are wrong. You call out anyway. You tell them the truth, that the caves will be sealed and burned by morning. That staying means death for everyone inside, that you will escort them out personally. Minutes pass. Then a voice answers, then another. One by one they emerge. By dawn, you have let out over 800 civilians and soldiers from a single cave system. Word spreads quietly at first, then uncontrollably. Among the Japanese ranks, rumors take on a life of their own. There is an American who speaks like one of them, an American who promises safety and delivers. Officers try to stop the whispers, but fear moves faster than orders. Among the Marines, your reputation hardens into something else entirely. You are no longer just a rifleman, you are a weapon, and Saipan is approaching its breaking point. The Japanese command makes its decision. Lieutenant General Sato knows the island is lost. His artillery is destroyed. His supply lines are gone. His remaining forces are cornered in the northern hills. There will be no evacuation, no relief. So he orders the final attack, not a tactical counteroffensive. A banzai charge. Every able-bodied soldier is to gather for one last assault, rifles, bayonets, even bamboo spears. Wounded men are told to crawl forward. Civilians are encouraged to join. The goal is not victory, it is annihilation. At 4:30 a.m. it begins. You hear it before you see it, a low roar rolling out of the darkness. Thousands of voices shouting in unison, feet pounding the ground. The sound swells until it drowns out everything else. You grab your rifle. The wave hits the American lines with ferocity unmatched in the Pacific War. Over 3,000 Japanese soldiers surge forward in a single mass. Machine guns overheat, barrels glow. Marines fire until their rifles click empty, then reload and fire again. The line bends. In places, it breaks. Hand-to-hand combat erupts. Bayonets flash. Grenades detonate at arm's length. Medics are cut down trying to reach the wounded. Entire companies are overrun before reinforcements can arrive. You fight like everyone else now. There is no talking in this chaos. No persuasion, only survival. Hours later, the ground is carpeted with bodies. When the firing finally stops, over 4,000 Japanese lie dead. It is the largest banzai charge of the war, and the last meaningful resistance on Saipan. By nightfall, organized defense has collapsed. But the killing is not over, because thousands of civilians remain trapped in the northern cliffs, terrified of capture, convinced surrender means torture or execution. American loudspeakers blare messages urging them to come down. Leaflets flutter uselessly in the wind. Most do not believe it. Some step off the cliffs anyway. You watch families leap together into the surf below, choosing death over surrender. You hear the impacts. You cannot unhear them, so you do what you have done from the beginning. You walk forward. You climb toward the caves near Marpi Point where the last holdouts hide. Snipers still fire from above. Mortars land without warning. Every step could be your last. You call out again. You speak calmly. You tell them the truth, and unbelievably, it works. Small groups come down, then larger ones. You escort them through American lines personally, shielding them from stray fire, shouting at Marines to hold their fire. By the end of the battle, you have helped capture or convince over 1,500 Japanese soldiers and civilians to surrender. Not by force, by understanding. At 17 years old, you have altered the tempo of an entire campaign. And Saipan, once deemed unbreakable, falls in just 3 weeks. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage, sacrifice, and unexpected humanity deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. The island is secured by July 9, 1944. The cost is staggering. Over 3,400 Americans dead, more than 13,000 wounded. But the timetable that once predicted months has collapsed into weeks. And what comes next will change the war forever. The fighting does not end when the island is declared secure. It never really does, because even after July 9, Saipan still breathes violence. Isolated gunshots echo from the hills. A hidden rifle cracks once, then goes silent forever. A cave collapses somewhere inland, sealing men inside who will never be counted. You move through this aftermath with the same tension you felt on the first night. The ground is churned into something unrecognizable. Palm trunks are shredded by shrapnel. The air smells of cordite, burned fuel, and decay. The ocean below the cliffs is dotted with debris, helmets, packs, bodies carried in by the tide. This is what victory looks like up close. And for you, the work is not finished. You are sent forward again, not officially, not on paper. Officers look the other way because they cannot argue with results. You are told to be careful, which is not an order so much as a plea. You head north. Marpy Point rises ahead of you, a sheer limestone wall that drops hundreds of feet into the Pacific. This is where the last civilians have gathered. Mothers clutching children, elderly men leaning on sticks, soldiers with no ammunition left and no illusions remaining. Japanese officers move among them, urging them toward the edge. You hear the words clearly, better to die than be captured. You climb anyway. Each step upward narrows the margin between life and death. Snipers still fire sporadically. You hear a round crack overhead and slam into rock inches from your face. Dust sprays your eyes. You blink, wipe it away, and keep going. You call out. Your voice carries strangely here, bouncing off stone and sea. You speak slowly, carefully. You tell them the war is over on Saipan. You tell them Americans are doctors, not executioners. You tell them the cliffs will not forgive them. Some listen, some scream back curses, and some jump while you are still speaking. You watch entire families step forward together. No hesitation, just gravity. The sound is not a splash. It is a series of dull, final impacts. You cannot stop all of it, but you stop enough. Groups begin to separate from the edge. A mother pulls her child back. An old man drops to his knees. A soldier throws his rifle away and raises his hands. You escort them down personally, moving between them and American positions, shouting in English and Japanese, making sure no one fires. By the time the last holdouts are cleared, the number is impossible to ignore. Over 1,500 enemy soldiers and civilians captured alive, on an island where surrender was supposed to be unthinkable. At 17, the implications ripple outward immediately. Saipan is not just another conquest, it is a rupture. Within days, American engineers are carving airfields into the coral. Bulldozers push aside wreckage that still smells of smoke and blood. Runways stretch longer than any in the Pacific. And then the bombers arrive. B-29 superfortresses, massive, silver, unstoppable, begin landing in numbers that defy imagination. Each one carries the war farther than Japan ever believed possible. From Saipan, Tokyo is 1,300 miles away, within range. What the Japanese high command feared most has happened, and it happened far faster than anyone planned for. The collapse of Saipan sends shockwaves through Tokyo. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo resigns within weeks. Military confidence fractures. Civilian morale cracks because the myth has died. The myth that island fortresses can hold indefinitely. The myth that surrender is impossible. The myth that the Pacific War must be fought to the last man on every beach. On Saipan, that myth meant something it could not withstand: adaptation. American firepower learned to work with infantry instead of ahead of it. Tanks learned to fight caves, not open fields. Flamethrowers rewrote defensive geometry. And intelligence, human intelligence, proved more powerful than bullets in the right hands. You are wounded during the battle, shot through the jaw and shoulder. You survive by inches. Medics pull you back just in time. Blood soaks your uniform. Pain comes later after the adrenaline fades. You are evacuated. While you recover, reports circulate up the chain of command. Numbers are verified. Testimonies recorded. Officers who once doubted your methods now defend them. You receive the Silver Star. Then it is downgraded. Politics, paperwork, discomfort with the idea that a teenager disarmed the enemy with words. Decades later, it will be corrected. But right now, the war moves on without pause because Saipan has changed everything. What they did not know at the time is how directly Saipan shortens the war. From these airfields, the strategic bombing of Japan begins in earnest. Factories burn. Cities are erased. The psychological distance between the battlefield and the homeland disappears. Japanese commanders begin revising defensive doctrine, but too late. Tinian falls in days, Guam follows. The pattern repeats, weeks not months. Every island after Saipan is haunted by its example. American forces arrive expecting caves, counterattacks, and death, and they bring answers for all three. Naval gunfire grows more precise, close air support tightens. Psychological warfare becomes doctrine, not improvisation. And surrender, once unthinkable, becomes possible. Not common, but possible. The true impact of Saipan is not just territorial, it is conceptual. It proves that belief systems can be destroyed faster than fortifications, and that even in total war, humanity can still matter tactically. In Tokyo, the news from Saipan arrives stripped of heroism. There are no victories to inflate, no maps to redraw optimistically, just numbers that refuse to be explained away. Tens of thousands of troops gone, an island fortress lost in weeks. American bombers now within reach of the home islands. For the first time in the war, Japan's leaders confront a reality they have worked tirelessly to deny. The defensive perimeter is shattered. Saipan was supposed to be a wall. Instead, it becomes a doorway. Within months, B-29 raids escalate from nuisance to catastrophe. Entire districts of Japanese cities vanish in single nights. Industrial output plummets. Civil defense collapses under the scale of destruction. The war is no longer something happening out there on distant islands. It is overhead. Inside the Imperial General Headquarters, planners quietly acknowledge what they cannot say aloud. If Saipan fell this fast, nothing else is truly safe. Not Iwo Jima, not Okinawa, not even Kyushu. What they also understand, but never fully admit, is why it happened. American forces did not simply bring more men. They brought learning. Every mistake paid for on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and Peleliu is corrected here. Naval gunfire becomes sustained and coordinated. Infantry no longer rushes blindly into caves. Tanks, engineers, and flamethrowers move as one system. Firepower is applied precisely, relentlessly. And where firepower alone is insufficient, psychology fills the gap. Leaflets, loudspeakers, negotiation. Human weakness exploited not with cruelty, but with understanding. That lesson will echo across the remaining battles of the Pacific. At Iwo Jima, Japanese resistance will still be fanatical, but surrender will happen in small numbers. On Okinawa, civilian tragedy will repeat itself, but American efforts to prevent mass suicide will be larger, more deliberate, informed by what happened at Marpy Point. None of it erases the cost, but all of it shortens the road to the end. And at the center of that shift is a truth most after-action reports struggle to phrase cleanly. Wars are not only broken by weapons, they are broken by people. When the war ends, you are not paraded through streets or immortalized in headlines. You are 20 years old. Your body carries scars that never fully fade. Your jaw aches when the weather changes. Your nights are crowded with sounds you cannot escape. The roar of a banzai charge, the impact of bodies against stone, the silence after. For years, your story is told incorrectly or not at all. You received the Navy Cross in 1960, 16 years too late. The citation confirms what Marines on Saipan already knew, that your actions directly saved thousands of lives, American and Japanese alike. You return to civilian life. You struggle, you fight, you drift. Like so many who survived the Pacific, you carry the war with you long after it stops carrying you. But Saipan never lets you go. Because to this day, the island stands as a dividing line in history. Before Saipan, the Pacific War is a slow, grinding advance against an enemy believed incapable of surrender. After Saipan, that certainty is gone. The myth of the unbreakable island dies there. The myth of the invincible defender dies there. And in its place stands something far more uncomfortable and far more human. The understanding that even in the most fanatical wars, belief can crack. Fear can be redirected. And lives can be saved by someone willing to walk alone into the dark and speak instead of shoot. You think about the numbers sometimes. 17 years old, over 1,500 captives, an island conquered in weeks instead of months, thousands of Americans who never had to storm a cave because it was already empty, thousands of Japanese who lived to see the war end because someone spoke to them in their own language. These are not statistics. They are absences, men who did not die, families that did not vanish into smoke or sea. And that is why this story matters now, because history often remembers explosions and overlooks restraint. It celebrates destruction and forgets the quieter acts that change outcomes just as decisively. Saipan was supposed to be unbreakable. It was not. It fell because tactics evolved, because firepower adapted, and because one teenager refused to accept that the only way forward was more death. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Guy L. Gabaldon and the thousands of men and women whose lives intersected on Saipan do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.